This document is the collective effort of a number of people, but most importantly, it tells the story of brave Libyan women and men who are actively building their communities. The report synthesizes and analyzes data and information collected during interviews with 73 respondents, 52% of whom are women, and all of whom are Libyan citizens from different parts of Libya that either exclusively implement women's and gender equality projects or include such projects in their portfolio of programming. Interviews were conducted at the end of 2017 and 2018. Respondents were divided into three broad groups: representatives of civil society organizations who are at the forefront of promoting women's rights; influencers, people who have the ability to impact the beliefs and behaviors of their communities. These include academics, prominent business people, and public media personalities. We also interviewed community members who live in their communities in which civil society operates and either support or have the potential to support the work of civil society organizations. Binda Consulting International designed the research instruments in partnership with the Institute for War and Peace Reporting as part of a larger project, one to assess organizational capacities and examine the environment in which civil society organizations work. The majority of the interviews with influencers and community members lasted over 1 hour, and those with civil society organizations lasted 2 to 3 hours. Interviews took place in the offices of civil society organizations, in cafes, in people's homes, and via Skype. The research found that effective implementation of civil society programs rely not necessarily on the size or the structure of organizations, but rather on their creativity, energy, understanding, and a sense of mission of the members and/or their volunteer activists. In fact, loose-knit and ad hoc groups of activists can have as much of an impact as professional organizations with formal structures and paid staff. In addition, researchers and respondents engaged in in-depth discussions about issues that are important to women in Libya, many of which are sensitive in Libya's largely conservative society. All capacity building efforts taking place throughout the life of this project use the data collected during the scoping exercise, enabling the Institute for War and Peace Reporting to tailor its support to meet the specific and stated needs of individual civil society organizations. The Ante Raeda program aims to enhance the operational capacity, sustainability, and impact of these CSOs, strengthening them organizationally and empowering them to improve the lives and visibility of women. CSO teams comprised entirely of volunteers drive successful programs and deliver vital assistance under challenging circumstances. They are delivering humanitarian assistance, charitable works, psychosocial support, education, health support, mitigating conflict, all with the valuable support of volunteers. Volunteering with a CSO or a charitable organization provides a safe and acceptable space, particularly for women, to socialize or participate in activities outside the home. Some CSOs report, however, a noticeable decline in volunteer stamina. Increasingly, Libyan citizens have to devote time to daily tasks like standing in line and providing for their families, and they have less time to donate to organizations. Strategies to recruit and retain volunteers have become a priority for many CSOs. This community-based engagement of volunteers offers a model for the development of Libya. As powers and authorities are devolved to the local level, volunteer groups will be important supporters of municipal councils, providing legitimacy and resources to the work of local authorities. There is opportunity for official Libya to recognize the work of volunteers and to promote volunteerism in the future. Online activism has increased as the security situation makes travel and gathering more difficult. CSOs are developing the platforms to provide distance education, empowerment programs, and exchange of information. Most significantly, online platforms are offering safe spaces for Libyans, particularly women, to meet and discuss issues that are difficult in public fora. CSO respondents note that building positive relationships with traditional local media can help build the trust and supportive communities in which they work. Radio is a trusted medium, in part because of the widespread perception that it is politically neutral, a reputation established during the revolution. Relatively accessible community-based radio provides an opportunity for civil society to tell its story. CSOs are stepping up and filling the gaps in Libya, particularly in the service sector, where the inability or unwillingness of government engagement has created a vacuum. Many organizations provide frontline assistance to displaced people, women and children traumatized by conflict, and those requiring medical support or treatment. Organizations providing direct support to vulnerable communities rely on the expertise of doctors and teachers who volunteer their time in schools and medical centers. Libya's conservative culture does not allow easy or open discussion of personal or private issues, including domestic and sexual violence. Nor are some of the health issues considered acceptable for public discussion, such as sexually transmitted diseases. Despite this, Libyans are finding ways of approaching public health discussions, creating safe spaces for psychosocial support provision, and raising issues related to gender-based violence. Using online platforms, partnering with national and international government organizations, and using peer groups, Libyans are sharing vital information, exchanging experiences, and providing support to vulnerable groups. The research uncovered various and contradictory perceptions of civil society organizations and the impact of their work in Libya. CSOs are a new phenomenon post-2011, and suspicion over what they do demonstrates they have to educate the public on the role of civil society in a democracy. Confused and negative perceptions are not altogether unfounded. Civil society organizations admit they do not always do a good job of communicating their achievements. There is a difference of opinion on if or by how much the status of women has improved in Libya since 2011. Community members cite examples of women who are active in elected politics, who drive, who are occupied in employment and business, and who engage in activism as evidence of greater participation by Libyan women and as advancement in the status of women. But although activists working on the empowerment of women recognize that permissive space has increased, even in the last year, they worry that the space is fragile. They also believe that real political empowerment is in the decline. Many respondents believe that socially conservative norms of Libya are significant factors in defining the roles of men and women within the family and the community. Despite these norms, many organizations are advocating for access to rights even within this dynamic. CSO activists suggest that imported ultra-conservative views on the rights of women mean that Libyan institutions do not often respect the current legal framework protecting the rights of women. Disregard for inheritance laws, the lack of action on gender-based violence are two examples of how attitudes impact the status of women. Divorced and widowed women are particularly vulnerable to the dictates of their family influenced by growing conservative values. Most of those interviewed acknowledged the security situation has a universal impact in Libya, but affects women and organizations with women members and programs catering to women disproportionately. Heightened tensions, ad hoc armed checkpoints, uncertain sensitivities, and crime have all restrictive impacts on how and when women can travel. Planning events becomes more difficult when participation requires road travel over great distances. These restrictions are most pronounced in rural and remote areas. Organizations that focus their advocacy on human rights are at risk of reprisal or violence by armed groups and militias. While many well-known human rights defenders have left Libya for their safety in the last period, those that remain are cautious in raising perceived violations of human rights. Many of the respondents who contributed to this research discussed the dangers of highlighting violations and the absence of rule of law to protect activists from reprisal. Consequently, human rights defenders mute legitimate and urgent human rights issues for fear of safety to self, family, or community. Most of the CSOs interviewed discuss formal and informal partnerships at mainly the grassroots. Given the vacuum in governance, economic, and security crisis, CSOs are filling in where the state would ordinarily be leading. Additionally, given the difficulties in mobility and tensions from one region to another, CSOs have begun network and collaboration. For example, implementing a national program would be difficult for a single organization whose members may be strangers in remote communities or viewed as being on the other side politically. Increasingly, CSOs are reaching across the country, identifying like-minded partners to engage in more extensive program delivery. As volunteerism is thriving, local councils and the business community are similarly demonstrating a commitment to social and economic development. Partnerships for development are filling the governance void caused by the current political crisis. The research demonstrates that most respondents view local councils as important partners in community development. Though councils lack significant formal authority, they do enjoy the confidence and support of citizens. Most organizations which have dealt with local government report positive experience as local councils often facilitate initiatives through the provision of venues and other material resources. While most of those interviewed believe that the national government has become dysfunctional because of the political crisis, many acknowledge that branch offices of ministries are engaged in community development. Not surprisingly, and particularly in rural and remote regions, branch-level workers are also community members, often influential, who themselves volunteer and are active in local development initiatives. As with local government, branch-level ministry officials provide CSOs with logistical, material, and expertise support. The research suggests that most Libyans do not understand the motivations and mechanisms for international support in their country. Several respondents suggest that armed groups who benefit from the current absence of law paint CSOs as colluding with foreign agents, and they discredit the criticism. Finally, some measure of misunderstanding can be attributed to physical absence of the international community in Libya, preventing it from conducting public diplomacy and bridging understanding. As well, very few of the organizations interviewed for this research appreciate the complexities of international assistance, priority setting, and decision-making. The research and the report has identified the key programmatic priorities for civil society in Libya. The first one is economic empowerment as a pathway. The current state of Libya's economy is dire. Inflation, scarcity, and a liquidity crisis are building pressures within families and particularly among vulnerable communities. In response to shifting reality, several organizations are now focusing programmatic activities on economic empowerment of women. Most respondents in the study believe that economic empowerment is also a pathway to political empowerment. Women who engage in economic activities gain experience and demonstrate capacity and competence they can transfer to the governmental and political sector. Although economic participation by women is considered more acceptable than other activities in society, women still face significant challenges emanating from social as well as religious attitudes. Aside from the conservative view of a woman's place in the home, women are sometimes confronted by bureaucrats with ultra-conservative perspectives who refuse to register businesses in their name. To avoid harassment or further difficulties, they sometimes end up registering through a male family member. Because of the liquidity and banking crisis, more women are starting cash-friendly businesses selling products online from their homes or through storefronts. Anecdotally, respondents told researchers that restaurants are increasingly employing female staff, something that was not common in the past. While the private sector was slowly opening more space for Libyans, particularly in the aftermath of the revolution, the economic crisis of the past several years has accelerated entry into the private sector and provides women in particular with new economic opportunities. Organizations that promote the political empowerment of Libyan women do so in a variety of ways. A majority of CSOs, however, tread cautiously on the path of politics. Many organizations are reluctant to become engaged in political activities when shifting alliances mean that picking the wrong side damage their and their families' standings in the community. The lack of political blocs or parties that empower and advocate for women further discourages women activists from making the leap from civic engagement to politics. Political parties can be important vehicles for political engagement. The absence of formal political institutions is keenly felt in the South, where tribes and militias control local institutions and govern according to their own rules and traditions. Women are largely absent from the national conflict resolution process in Libya. They are, however, making inroads in local mediation and reconciliation efforts. Several activists are already engaged in local communities and engage in work that influencers and members of the community recognize as valuable contributions. In this report, BCI and IWPR have made recommendations to civil society organizations for programming. One recommendation is to cultivate future political leaders by identifying and training activists and community members who enjoy influence and who can be recruited to run for political office at all levels, national and local. CSOs should be preparing women for political engagement now that will equip them for robust political participation when the Libyan process becomes less toxic and hostile. CSOs should conduct public accountability dialogues and political process monitoring. Many citizens are often unaware of initiatives being considered by legislative or government bodies. CSOs can provide fora and space for debating public policies and disseminating information about issues and initiatives before Parliament or local government that affect the interests of different groups, particularly women and children. Political process monitoring mechanisms allow for periodic reporting and holding political actors accountable for their conduct. CSOs can build capacity for effective communication skills and techniques using methods of direct and indirect communication to practice speaking to one another about women in politics and sharing success stories. CSOs can organize cyber gatherings connecting through Facebook, Viber group, WhatsApp, in regions where on-the-ground gatherings are difficult. They can demystify issue identification and policy development processes. Women who lack experience in public and political life often believe they are unable to compete because they do not have the requisite knowledge for weighty political issues such as the economy, budgeting, defense, or security. CSOs, particularly those that engage in research, advocacy, or government monitoring, can help political aspirants understand complex policy issues. Civil society organizations can organize debates and dialogues for marginalized groups or candidates. Organizers of public or televised debates tend only to invite high-profile or senior male political leaders from the community to participate in events. CSOs can provide spaces for women, influencers, and other marginalized groups to have their voices heard and represent their interests. CSOs can develop a network and database of women role models. Very often, political organizations claim women are not qualified or have no interest in participating in political and public life. Establishing a network of women maintaining information on their capacities, their areas of interest, their willingness to be called upon to participate in various fora will allow CSO and political activists to rapidly identify women to participate in public events so that they can be promoted as candidates for public or elected office. CSOs can build on the capacity of women in negotiating and conflict resolution to promote the skills of women, some of whom are already engaged in reconciliation initiatives in their communities. Women can share experiences and discuss conflict resolution practices. CSOs can expand the participation to include women in government and elected positions for whom negotiation skills are useful. They can engage religious leaders as influencers in dialogue with women to exchange experiences and educate leaders about the impact of conflict on women and their potential role in reconciliation. CSOs should continue to build confidence and encourage participation of women in dialogue, peace efforts, and conflict prevention at the local level in reconciliation processes. Women can influence people around them, their families, their communities, and their tribes. Social media can also be used to share information that can be useful for activities on reconciliation between tribes. CSOs can provide practical guidance on entrepreneurial and fundamental business development skills. They can provide information and instruction on issues such as entrepreneurship, business management, leadership, administration, accounting, and marketing. Some women also need training in skills that can be used to find jobs in female-friendly sectors, such as language skills, computer skills, home-based jobs, handicrafts, and beautician skills. CSOs can provide more advanced support to women who have established women-owned or women-managed businesses to enhance their networks and develop market linkages. Advanced trainings can also include developing web-enabled, social media-based, and SMS technologies, e-marketing, sustainable business, financial programs, and tools for increased access to financial services and markets. CSOs can create and support mentorship programs for women entrepreneurs. Women who have already established businesses can mentor beginners by sharing experiences and providing ongoing practical information to navigate the banking system, to understand issues such as the demand of supply of goods and foreign currency. When the security environment improves, CSOs should consider publicly celebrating the success of women in business. CSOs can advocate to national and international agencies to develop microfinance opportunities for women entrepreneurs. They can design activities to promote and protect the existing rights of Libyan women. CSOs should advocate for increased equality under the law and proper application of international agreements and conventions, which Libya has ratified, such as the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the CEDAW Convention. CSOs can develop legal literacy education activities. Legal aid and literacy can be delivered via workshops, telephone helplines, medical and legal partnerships, online information and chat tools, and downloadable court forms. Such activities and education help people understand their rights and responsibilities, where legal assistance may be needed, and where to find it. CSOs can advocate for legal reform in Libya to redress gender discrimination in laws. CSOs can conduct studies and use existing knowledge of information to develop proposals for legal reform. The research shows that several CSOs know that women have asked for reform in the citizenship law, the family law, and laws addressing gender-based violence. Organizations are well placed to organize advocacy campaigns to inform policymakers and legislators on needs and solutions. They can expand and strengthen legal assistance to women with special needs. When designing legal assistance programs, CSOs should particularly target women with disability, women prisoners, displaced women, and women married to non-Libyans. They can establish hotlines for women and men at risk of violence. Hotlines can provide victims of violence the ability to speak to volunteer professionals who can advise and direct victims to support services. CSOs should also provide victim support services to men who encounter sexual violence, such as rape in prison. CSOs can monitor and document cases of gender-based violence. They can provide authorities with information on gender-based violence, including sexual violence, abductions, and harassment. CSOs can bring pressure to bear to the government and the justice system to document gender-based violence to ensure that perpetrators of gender-based violence are punished. CSOs can establish shelters and centers for victims of violence. Volunteer medical professionals can provide services to women to heal physically and psychologically, as well as provide counseling for families to break the culture of blaming victims. They can expand programs that address women's health, including reproductive rights, protection of people living with HIV/AIDS, as entry points to address other issues such as gender-based violence. Many individuals worked on this project. 6 Libyan researchers braved difficult conditions to collect data, conduct interviews, and relay stories, perspectives, and realities of civil society organizations. The research team was led by BCI's Mohamed Kassaoune. Mohamed worked with the researchers to overcome obstacles they faced in the field. He brought his depth of experience working with civil society in the Middle East and North Africa to shape the research, ensure that the data was stored and protected in a way that allowed us to analyze the results and present the findings in a practical manner to be of use to IWPR and to the CSOs. He worked with the IWPR on finalizing the report we are now discussing. Gender experts reviewed the research instruments, the analysis, and the final report. A team of translators worked long hours to translate interviews and data, CSO assessments, and the final report. The entire IWPR team worked tirelessly to get this project off the ground. Its support in liaising with the CSO partners, helping gather and analyze data, and overall coordination efforts were invaluable. Of course, it is the foresight of the Government of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland to prioritize engagement with Libyan civil society organizations that made this project possible. Support of the UK Embassy in Libya to invest substantial funds and time for a project of this kind are rare in the international donor community and demonstrates a unique commitment. Thank you.